What is your take on networking? Because it's like Marmite. They either love it or hate the word networking.
A lot of people have different perspectives on networking, but for me, I think networking is actually about, you becoming a good person.
What's one takeaway that's very personal to you that you'd share with our audience?
One word that I'll give to advise our friends is that
hello and welcome back to Cutting Edge. Today I'm very pleased to be joined by Vincent. So Vincent is an ex-investment banking intern at Avantgarde Capital, which is an investment banking boutique advisory firm based in Indonesia. Vincent, pleasure to have you here today. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
No, our pleasure. And if you could kick us off by just talking a bit more about yourself, telling us about your background, that'd be great.
Sure. My name is Vincent. I was born and raised in Jakarta in Indonesia. I think growing up, I was exposed to my dad running his chemical business. That's why I'm interested to the chemical industry, basically. And I decided to pursue my bachelor degree in chemical engineering at the University of Birmingham. But then over time, after talking to friends, my dad's colleagues, who was the CFO of a leading chemical business back in Indonesia, I was really excited and inspired about the firm doing an IPO and using the proceeds for developing their manufacturing sites. So that struck me how bankers help businesses to expand, to reinvest, and using the proceeds to basically expand the business. So decided to take my master's in finance to learn more about corporate transactions, M&As, capital markets. I found services like investment banking, and that's I'm really interested with all of the surface. I did an intern at Avantgarde back in Indonesia, and I found myself enjoy working on client-facing work, that's pretty much brought me to where I am today.
Sounds good. And going back to academic experience, so I think I noticed you were doing an undergraduate degree in chemical. Yep. Was it chemical engineering?
Yeah,
is that right?
Chemical engineering.
So what made you choose to start your sort of academic journey in undergrad level in chemical engineering? And I'm very curious to hear how you pivoted towards a master in finance.
Sure. I think this is a fun fact that both of my mom and dad, they actually studied chemical engineering. I was talking to my dad the other day. I was a bit confused, which major to take. I asked my dad, and he said, look, me and mom both studying chemical engineering. Why don't you just take chemical engineering as well? So we have a chemical engineers in the family. That's actually why I took chemical engineering, and I'm interested in UK. I like the culture, the people. That's why I took my degree in UK, and I think Birmingham is actually one of the best chemical engineering school. That's actually why I took chemical engineering. And I think over time, I think I did a few internships as a chemical engineer back in Indonesia, working like in plants or laboratory for manufacturing. But I found myself, I think I don't see myself working as a chemical engineer in the long term. So I started to think, what's actually best for me. I started to think, probably, more business side. I like numbers. I like doing Excel. So I think finance will suit me. But over time, I enjoy working on big projects, and that's where investment banking has. Yeah.
That's really interesting, especially going to, you're not too sure what you want to do at university, having parental support to then go into chemical engineering, because obviously they can help you with that. It's clearly of interest, and it goes to show that it doesn't really matter what base you have going into the industry. And that's one of the key questions which students come to us and to others and ask, well, look, what degree do I need to position myself for a job in finance? The answer is it doesn't necessarily have to be in economics, finance, maths, all the classic STEM subjects. I mean, to an extent in chemical engineering, there is sort of critical thinking and logic.
Yeah.
So that can help, but I've seen all sorts of degree backgrounds going to the industry. So I think it's much more, would you agree, that the work experience and sort of the people you meet in between that dictate where you're going to go, rather than your degree subject itself and your end result from your degree?
Yeah, I'll definitely agree. Like for example, in my case, I met my dad's colleagues, the CFO. I met a lot of friends who works in the finance industry. And yeah, after talking to them, I just find myself enjoy finance rather than engineering. So I agree. I think after talking to people, they'll dictate your future rather than just your degree. And yeah,
sounds good. And was it the case where you suddenly realized that you weren't going to pursue chemical engineering? Was it always something that you thought, actually, it's unlikely I'm going to pursue? And with the jump to masters in finance, was there like a light bulb moment where you decided, yes, I'm going to go for it, I'm going to apply? Or was that again more gradual itself?
I'll say it was towards the end of the course. I think it was during my my final year. As I didn't have any secured role, full-time jobs yet. So I started to discuss with my mom and dad, my family, what should I do next? And yeah, that's why I actually decided to take masters, just a year for me to think what I want to do. And yeah, I think along the way, I've talked to a lot of people, my friends, especially back in Indonesia. There are people working in private equity, investment banks, or even financial services. So yeah, I think after talking to them, that helps me in understanding more about the roles, the industry, that helps me to decide that I want to take masters first before going to a full-time job.
Great. And what was the difference studying a master's, first of all, compared to an undergraduate degree? And did you enjoy the master's in finance specifically? And what was it exactly about the master's that you enjoyed?
Sure. I mean, there are a lot of my friends who go to financial services from engineering right away without doing a master's. But I think I took masters in finances because just wanna have a year to learn more about finance itself, learning about the industry, and I think along my 1 year master, I learned a lot about finance and particularly I think I'm interested in like valuations, which has been really really useful for applying jobs, especially in investment banking, because they do test about technicals on valuation. So that's really helpful. And yeah, I think a year of masters in finance is really helpful because like after talking to my friends who did their bachelor in finance, I think just over a year I'm able to get all of the concepts compared to my friends who studied for 3 years. So that's really helpful. So I was able to learn finance like over a year, and that's really very detailed and really helpful in understanding finance in general. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Sure. And you mentioned you picked up technical knowledge as well.
Yeah.
I guess most of it was academic driven, but did you find that there was practical application throughout too? And during your academic course, were you already looking at potential internships and work experience?
I think that definitely the masters helped me with most of the technical knowledge for getting into investment banking, like from accounting, from understanding financial statements, valuations, bit of M&As and LBOs. That's really helpful. I think apart from that, I actually met my friend who was a ex-corporate lawyer. So by talking to him, I was also able to understand more about investment banking practically, and something that's not in the textbook because he was in the industry. That's really helpful. So I think other than just learning the textbook of finance, but you meet people as well from the industry. That's really helpful.
Yeah, I can imagine that first-hand experience and the stories is definitely what gets you interested. And what is it specifically about finance or investment banking that excites you, that made your eyes spark and go, I should definitely apply to this? Because I guess, was it more curiosity to see what it was like, or was there something that really motivated you to apply?
Sure. I think I would say there's two reasons. One is because my dad actually expects me to go back to Indonesia to help grow his business, and I find myself, I don't think I'll help you from the technical side of the engineering. I'll say I'll help you on the finance side. So that's one, helping out my dad for the financial side. Two is if you read headlines, this firm doing IPO or this firm doing M&As with X billion of dollars. I think it's just interesting to see a big transactions, helping firms to grow or doing strategic moves. That really excites me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly one of the same reasons as me. The impact that you can have.
Yeah.
The sort of the fact that you can see on the front of the FT a transaction has just closed, or the Twitter acquisition by Elon Musk, and behind the scenes, it's your investment bankers underwriting a loan, an IPO, the ones advising on M&A.
Exactly.
And so the best part is that although there are many different sectors, many different spin-offs in investment banking, the remit is so broad as well, so it's not quite the same thing.
Yeah, agreed.
And I think the deal-by-deal driven nature of it is really what appealed to me.
Yeah, agreed.
I guess it sounds like very much similar story.
Yeah, I think I saw like you work on a lot of industry or sectors. You're exposed to a lot of industries. That's really nice. And then secondly is you don't just do M&As or IPOs, but you also help. I mean, bankers help for startups to fundraise as well. That's interesting because like in 2021, there's been a lot of a big trend in startups doing fundraising. So that's actually interesting how bankers helping out startups to grow as well by fundraising. And that's why I think investment banking is really interesting.
Yeah, you touched on a really interesting point just then, this paradigm shift in finance and fundraising. Private equity now, especially with interest rates going up, inflation so high, and their returns being eroded away, means that on those classic transactions, things like infrastructure or whatnot, or other classic leverage buyouts, private equity companies are no longer as competitive as they used to be. Again, this is quite a broad stereotype, and hence why a lot of private equity firms are now turning towards more startup-driven companies, or maybe venture capital-related investments. And again, it's this idea that there's so much dry powder sitting out there that needs to be spent, and why would they invest X billion in one project that's not going to be worth it, worth their return on capital, worth the time it's going to spend to identify the deal, due diligence it, and maybe not even acquire it, when they can be the first mover in 10 different startups that they've identified.
Agree.
And what was it about that made you go, oh, hang on, this is changing, this is interesting? How did you find out about it?
I think if we rewind back to 2021, I think the headlines are mostly, well, especially back in Indonesia, or the headline has been, this firm, this startup raised X amount of money. This startup expanded this product or services. So I mean, every day, literally, like the news has been around startups, especially in tech, and that actually excites me. How firms grow over pandemic. Sometimes, and even the economic is a bit downturn, but firms actually expanding, especially the small ones, the startups. So that's really, really interesting. How, and then seeing a lot of venture capitals growing their asset under management to invest in a lot of sectors, to invest in a lot of firms, helping out. And then one of the best startup in Indonesia, that's actually called Gojek or Gozo today. They started from a 5 people startup to a 13 billion pounds company today.
Wow.
So it's just the growth is just massive. The impact, it's just interesting to see such company doing innovations and helping out the nation. I think that's really interesting.
I presume Jakarta is the central hub for entrepreneurs in Indonesia.
Yes.
And tech heavy predominantly.
Yeah.
Interesting. Much. I mean, from an M&A perspective, I was reading a data site report. Tech is still very much dominating deal volume and deal value.
Yeah.
And considering that multiples and valuations have gone down this year for a variety of mostly macro reasons and investor appetite reasons, it's still the most popular and it's only going to grow and grow and grow.
Yeah, I agree.
It's hard to see tech or the tech industry going obsolete versus other sectors which are lagging behind quite clearly.
Yeah, so, I agree.
Do you find that investment banking experience within tech is a very attractive place right now? And are there any particular sectors within investment banking that you've leaned towards thus far?
Sure. I think during my internship, investment banking internship, we had a few clients in tech and also in healthcare, actually. We had a lot of clients in healthcare. I think these two sectors is of my interest because I think tech, again, I agree, the growth, the changes is just massive and interesting. And I'll say, one thing about tech that is interesting is that, sometimes it's not just about the tech itself, but how we actually help other industries to develop. And I mean, today you can see health tech, education tech, everything integrating with tech. So the market is just massive for investment bankers. I think tech is something that I'm interested in. And other than that, it's actually healthcare.
Okay.
I think, again, looking back, I think COVID pushed the healthcare industry as a whole. I think looking at, how firms are developing vaccines, that just changed how the healthcare industry is. I think healthcare is something that it's something people will need. And so there will always be demand in the market. There has been a lot of M&As as well in the healthcare, how big firms, conglomerates buying small healthcare companies. So a lot of conglomerates expanding to healthcare as well, not just tech. So that's something that's interesting. Yeah.
There's certainly been a shift since COVID in consumer trends across all sorts of industries.
Yeah.
The direct to consumer from a sales point perspective, the digital healthcare model that now you can go on the NHS app, or it might have been there before, but people want to have more access on their mobile, on their laptops to their health records and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
So it's a perfect space. And I agree that tech itself is so broad that you need subsectors within tech.
Yeah.
It just applies to every single industry that is out there, whether it's the product or service itself, whether it's the supply chain, the sales model, the distribution, that actually having it used to be called TMT, technology, media, telecoms. I mean, they probably are to such an extent these days, but in investment banking, I wouldn't be surprised, and it's probably the case already, where it's getting more specific and more niche, where, for example, instead of healthcare or tech, you have biotech and these other subsectors, because what I find is that specialism is going to help you to identify deals, find the right clients, and actually know more about the industry than your competitors.
Yeah.
And because it's so broad, there's so many opportunities there.
Absolutely. I'm pretty sure one day they'll divide, from TMT to just MT, and then there's another tech
on a standalone basis itself, right?
This is huge, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even with tech, that used to be, the classic big tech that you look at now in Microsoft, Amazon, Google, but it doesn't just stop as, tech as a platform and social media. It just encompasses absolutely everything. And in the startup world, a lot of what I see from going to founder events and pitches are things like SaaS subscription models. That seems to be the real big driver at the moment, at least from a fundraising perspective.
I agree. Yeah.
Do you think that it will get to a stage where a lot of these current startups focused on SaaS subscription models for all sorts of different kinds of platform, they'll grow to eventually be the next big tech companies by which investment banks will advise and underwrite deals for.
Yeah, definitely. I think SaaS is a new also business model for firms to operate with, because they're subscription based. It helps them reducing costs and etc. So SaaS is something that's interesting. And I think in the future there might be huge firms in SaaS. Yeah,
the next big wave of tech. Yeah. Maybe,
sure.
Hopefully not the next big bubble. It's hard to say. That's really interesting. And I guess from your perspective now, so you've had that experience in investment banking after having done chemical engineering undergrad, master's in finance, Avantgarde Capital internship, which was predominantly, you said, healthcare and a bit of tech.
Yeah.
And so now going forward, having had all of that experience and all those technical skills, what is it in finance that you're really leaning towards and what you're enjoying the most?
Not sure. I think I'm interested in fundraising and M&As, these two, which basically is just investment banking. I think one I like fundraising is because, again, with my story about my dad's friend doing an IPO, it's just interesting to see firms expanding and we as a banker helping out to source the fund. And M&A, I think it's interesting because firms will require inorganic growth as well, and that's where we as a banker helping out firms to find strategic partners or strategic acquisitions. So that's interesting.
It's pretty crazy to see how fast companies can grow through things like buy and build strategies.
Exactly.
Where your organic growth is efficient, it's slow and steady.
Yeah.
You're not putting things like the culture at risk or the product itself.
Yeah.
But if you can get that strategic acquisition strategy right, your company growth is exponential relative to your organic.
I mean, with tech, it's a very competitive industry. So companies, would want to capture market fast, and you can't really do that by doing inorganic growth. You'll perform better if you do M&As or inorganic growth, basically.
Yeah, and the classic idea that M&A is just for synergies, I think that model is probably obsolete now. It's too outdated. It's not just because you want to realize a revenue synergy, to be cost synergies. Yes, if you buy lots of companies in tech and integrate them, you can consolidate back office costs, etc. But I think, like you said, it's market share. It's how do we make this a big competitive platform? Yeah. How do we buy up users? How do we buy up the right people to advertise or market the product?
Yeah.
And I think that's how a lot of the recent big tech companies have grown and continue to grow. So in fact, the barriers to entry are probably one of the key sort of sticky points for companies in the sector.
Yeah, I agree.
And strategic growth can help them to combat the incumbents, which is really interesting to see.
I agree.
And so if we park the discussion on all things fundraising, M&A, what areas of finance have you heard about that interest you, but that actually you haven't had direct experience from? Have you come across friends in the private equity or hedge fund industry? Have you ever considered management consulting? Or are you so set on investment banking you haven't really considered all these alternative career paths or exit paths?
Yeah. I had a few friends who's actually in the MBBs, the big consulting firms. I've asked them about what's their daily activities, their daily responsibilities. I even had joined their prep for the case study, the consulting case study. It was interesting. I think management consulting is something that's interesting as well, because you learn a lot of sectors as well. You learn about a business, from the supply chain, from the customers, from the market share, etc. You learn a lot from management consulting in general. But I think I would say I'll prefer IB than consulting, is because I think we do more on the financial side, and that's something that I think I would say I'm pretty good at, because I had my engineering degree, the analytical skills, And yeah, that's why I'm staying at the IBs. Yeah,
I see. Makes sense. It's really good to get an understanding of the broader industry, and I think naturally you lean towards what's most interesting too. And one thing that comes across a lot is this idea of burnout in the industry,
right?
And this idea that it is going to be hard. A lot of the time, it's long hours, especially deal-driven nature.
Yeah.
From your experience, what is it that helps avoid burnout? Do you think the biggest reason is a fundamental interest? Do you think it extends to things like having a good team in place, good people to work around? What are some of the key factors for you in general for juniors to avoid this idea of burnout?
Yeah, I think you'll get burned out is because one, you might, that's something that's not your interest. That'll be one of the reasons why. If you force yourself working in investment banking but you don't like it, it's very hard to be sustainable working in the long term. I think one, you have to make sure you actually like the role itself or the task you do every day. And two, yeah, I think having a good team, a good surrounding is very helpful for you to avoid becoming burnt out. Yeah.
Got it. And in terms of working hours and in terms of the whole pressure and going from studying an undergrad degree and then masters in finance to working in finance, did you find it was a big adjustment? Did it come quite naturally to you? I mean, obviously, you've probably seen, for example, with your dad's company, that it can get intense, especially with the IPO, I can imagine. Did it come at all as a surprise to you?
I would say it's not that of a surprise for me, because back when I was studying engineering, I spent a lot of hours as well. So, for example, going to campus from like 9 a.m. to like 11 p.m. And I think one is because the course itself is hard. But from there, I learned to spend putting a lot of hours. I think it's good to know that, as a banker, you actually spend a lot of time working, right, Tom? I mean, you work in banking before. I think it is important to know that if you're able to work long hours, that's really important, because otherwise you'll get burnout, as we mentioned earlier. Yeah.
I think those hours you mentioned, 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. chemical engineering, that's tough to beat for a commitment to undergraduate degree. I think I was quite happy with my 2 to 3 hours of lectures or 7 hours a day, then spend the rest of the time in, I don't know, rugby or the finance societies or whatnot. And actually, I mentioned finance societies. That was, to me, one of my favorite parts of university itself. Did you do much in the scope of finance societies at uni? Was that a good stepping stone to then finding your current roles? And
yeah, definitely. I think joining finance societies is really important, especially if you don't have a lot of finance related internships on your CV, because it shows that you're actually interested, and it shows your teamwork skills. That's really important. I joined this banking and finance society during my master's. And that's really helpful because my role was an M&A analyst. So we do weekly M&A reports. That actually helps me improving my commercial awareness. And that's really helpful because during interviews, you'll be asked for sure about commercial awareness. For example, asking about, tell me about a recent deal, that's really helpful. So I think I'll recommend people joining finance society, not just improving your commercial awareness, but also, by joining those societies, it helps with your networking as well. Get in touch with a lot of people from the industry. That's really helpful. Yeah.
Did you find it was also just as important to have that support bubble of other people going through the same really routine application process of 50 plus applications in the hopes of securing an internship? It can be quite soul draining at times from my experience. Do you find that being in a finance society where A, you can benefit from everyone else's advice and feedback, but B, just having people to talk to about it, did that help you?
Yeah, definitely. I think those 2 points are are something that I am looking for when I joined the society.
Yeah.
Because from my background, I don't really have a lot of back then. I don't really have a lot of finance friends. I would say most of them are engineering or tech, and yeah, getting to the society, get to know a lot of friends who did spring insights or doing summer internships in the investment banking. So yeah, I usually approach them, asking for tips, and yeah, it's really helpful having a bubble to help you with the application journey.
Yeah, I found a lot of my good close friends from York who happen to have been in the finance society have been the ones that we're still in touch with, still talking to now. And it's not just the fact that they're obviously great people, but you just have so much in common. You're both on a very similar journey as well in the industry. You can relate. Things have been tough this year, or it's been a promotion for someone, and you can relate as to the ecstasy that they go through. So in a way, those contacts you meet in finance society, they could be helpful now, they could be helpful in future, they could just be a great friend to keep in touch with. So,
yeah, I agree.
I mean, for me, we did this finance conference at my university, and I think just inviting people as guest speakers to the conference was great, because not only did we get to share their insights with the audience, but we're now still in touch with them, me personally, and I think it opens up a lot of doors, and it helps you from this networking perspective too. What is your take on networking? Because people, it's like Marmite, they either love it or hate the word networking. I think because I think networking is a bit overblown, it's just talking and meeting other people. But on the other side, it's actually valuable to have a network of people and contacts that you can talk to, draw from their experience. What's your take on networking?
I think I would say, a lot of people have different perspective on networking, but for me, I think networking is actually about, you becoming a good person. So you're not just taking information from people, but you're actually helping out as well. So yeah, I think networking helps a lot. I mean, myself, I enjoy connecting with a lot of people. So that's why I find networking, not really a hard thing. And actually, I enjoy doing it. Just connecting to people, learn something new. There must be something in common, I think. And that's usually the start of a networking. So actually, an interesting fact is that the internship at Avantgarde, I think I was able to convince them that I'm a good candidate, is because in my master's, I met this friend who was actually the ex-corporate lawyer. He actually done some deals with Avantgarde before. So he actually helped me in introducing to the CEO of Avantgarde. So that's really helpful.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it's a skill as much as it is.
Yeah. So by connecting with people, you'll never know, Yeah.
It's only beneficial. It's a win-win. Absolutely. And as we draw this conversation to a close, we typically end by asking our guests for one piece of wisdom or advice for people looking to break into the finance industry or begin a job in finance. What's one takeaway that's very personal to you that you'd share with our audience?
I would say, I was able to get into investment banking. It wasn't easy. So one word that I'll give to advise our friends is that persist. So I think just keep going. It can be 2 steps front and then 3 steps backward. And it's absolutely fine. I think that's life. Just keep going. Just put the hours, put the effort, and you'll have a good result one day. Yeah.
It's golden advice there. That'll go on our motivational reels for sure. I think it applies to anything, isn't it? Fundraising, applying.
Absolutely. Just
keep going. And actually, you're probably one step away from that victory when you think you've hit rock bottom or you can't see an end in sight.
I agree. Yeah.
Well, that's really great. Thanks for coming on this.
Thanks for having me, Tom. It's really
nice. Enjoyed the conversation. Really nice. All the best going forward.
Thank you.
And look forward to staying in touch.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, then hit the follow and subscribe button to keep up to date with our latest episodes.
For more content and resources, check out Financial Edge Training's website and social accounts. Financial Edge is trusted to train new hires at top investment banks. Our courses, resources, and tools will help you to succeed in finance.